Recording in progress.
Oh, the echo. Thank you, Kathy. All right. So, welcome everybody. We're really excited to have you with us tonight, Patty, Adriana, and AK. We will be joined by a fourth panelist, Ben, in about half an hour. Um, and we're just really excited to have you all here to share your knowledge with us. So, thank you so much. Um, So Ben will just jump into the conversation whenever he gets here. And we'll just keep it moving. Before we get into the official questions, we would love for you all to introduce yourselves within a couple minutes with your name, your pronouns, the organization you're representing today, and a short description of how you got started in tenant and housing justice organizing work. And so Thank you, Kathy, for pinning folks. And maybe we'll just go alphabetically for this first portion, and then we can switch it up moving on. So, Adriana, please feel free to introduce yourself.
That would be me. Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana Grant. My pronouns are she, her. I am a board member for the Community Alliance of Tenants. That's who I'm representing today, also known as CAT. We're an organization. Large majority of our work is done out of Portland, but we represent tenants throughout the entire state of Oregon. We educate and empower renters, advocate for stronger renter protections, and work to expand safe and affordable housing throughout the state. We believe that all renters should have access to the support they need to secure safe, stable, and affordable housing, and that advancing housing justice requires recognizing how identities and lived experiences intersect. So, I personally got started in tenant and housing justice work through my own experiences with homelessness. I've lived through several periods of instability that showed me firsthand how much public policy shapes almost every outcome in housing, from access to safe spaces, financial stability, and the ability to stay within a community. So, those experiences are really what made me realize a lot of people don't even have the capacity or resources to advocate for themselves in these systems. And that's where the organizing and policy work really becomes essential. So, that all of those experiences kind of culminated and inspired me to get involved myself because I wanted to speak up for the tenants who are often overlooked while also empowering the people who have the capacity to take action. So, by giving them the tools, knowledge, and support they need to protect their homes and build collective power, it's really about, like I said, ensuring people have the stability and autonomy in their homes and communities, and ensuring that those voices guide the work that we do every day at CAP. It's nice to be here. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have you. I believe AK is here still, right? I think AK popped off but popped on.
Yes, sorry. I finally got my computer connected, but then it disconnected anyways, and then I didn't know how the alphabet worked. So sorry, everybody.
Okay, no worries.
But anyways, jumping right back in, I'm AK. I am based in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. However, I'm from Washington. Um, but I am representing ShelterJH or Shelter Jackson Hole, and we are also a political advocacy org working on advocating for more access to affordable workforce, deed restricted public housing, and like tenant rights and zoning changes, things like that. Um, the main reason why I got involved in housing is also due to housing instability. And in Jackson specifically, we have the most billionaires per capita, which also means that our real estate is a bit messed up, to say lightly. And so our average home sale price in Teton County is above 7 million. And we have the largest wealth disparity in the country, and also the highest annual income because of the extreme wealth really skewing the data. So needless to say, housing is a big issue. It's very hard for the actual local workforce to live and work here. So we're really pushing for those deed restrictions to make it accessible.
Thanks, AK. And Patty, welcome.
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Patti Flores, mi pronunciación es ella y yo soy organizadora con Firelands Trabajadores Unidos desde el 2019, justo antes de la pandemia. Yo me uní a Firelands y a esta lucha por la justicia de vivienda también, por mi familia. Soy mamá de 2 hijos y este es mi hijo Matías, que sufría muchos problemas respiratorios debido a los grandes problemas que teníamos en nuestra casa móvil en ese entonces. Yo fui reclutada en una encuesta donde nos preguntaban sobre los problemas de vivienda y yo decía, uff, tengo cantidad de problemas, no solo yo, pero mis vecinos y algunos otros familiares que vivían en el mismo vecindario. Y cuando empezamos a escuchar que otros están pasando por los mismos problemas que nosotros tenemos, es cuando decimos, ah, caray, no estoy sola en este problema. Habemos muchas personas que estamos enfrentando este problema sin importar nuestra raza, nuestro lenguaje o incluso nuestro estatus social. El sistema de vivienda ya sabemos que es un problema totalmente obsoleto y necesita ser reestructurado ya. ¿Por qué? Porque muchos de las personas que toman ventaja de las familias como la mía siguen enriqueciéndose y enriqueciéndose a través del dolor humano, a través del dolor de cada una de las personas cuando sabemos que la vivienda es un derecho humano.
Thank you so much, Patty. And thank you to the three of you for being here. And again, Ben will be popping on in about half an hour or so. He just had a work emergency, which I'm sure you can all relate to as organizers. So Kathy, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, and we'll oops, sorry, we already did that. Next slide after that. This is our first question, which we'll also put in the chat for you. But how do you all navigate mobilizing and working through challenges, supporting cross-class and multicultural bases, especially Latina or Latinx folks, as they make up a large demographic of your constituents? And whoever wants to start, whoever feels like they're ready to go first, can kick us off.
I can go. Perfect. Okay. So at CAT, we start from the reality that tenants aren't a monolith. So things like language, immigration status, income, culture, all of these things impact how people experience housing and stability. One of the main things that we do is prioritize Spanish language organizing and materials and investing in bilingual tenant leaders, not just translation, but actually culturally rooted leadership. It's really important that those voices aren't just being spoken for, but being the ones speaking. So we also really focus on explicitly naming how housing injustice impacts people differently. So connecting those experiences to shared systems like rent increases, displacement, landlord power, things like that. We focused a lot on meetings, trainings, and outreach happening in spaces and formats that work for working class tenants. Things like, where can we provide childcare? Where can we provide events that are hosted in the evening, in community-based locations that are easily accessible, that are central locations, near bus stops, etc. Those are all things that we try to really take into account when we're organizing in the community. And especially for undocumented tenants, we really are focusing, especially in this period and this administration on how to create safer entry points into organizing that don't require immediate public visibility, but do allow people to engage in these spaces. There's a lot of different needs and different risks, so we try to treat that diversity as a strength and not as a barrier. There may be some people who are able to advocate on the front lines and able to put themselves in these spotlights, and there are other people who that may be too much of a risk for them. So we really try to we don't exclude anybody from participating at all. And in fact, those voices that may not be able to be spotlighted as we would typically think of are some of the most impactful. So we just really try to make sure that we include as much perspective as we can, and give as much support to the people that need it as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Patty or AK, do either of you feel called to go next?
Puedo seguir, gracias. Sí, Firelands también es una organización que está compuesta, por supuesto, de la clase trabajadora. Somos una organización también multirracial. Estamos llevando nuestras reuniones en 2 idiomas, que sabemos que es un reto y es un desafío, pero no es imposible y es fundamental para que sea accesible, ¿no? Para todos. También tenemos un grupo de respuesta rápida porque sabemos que con la nueva administración muchas cosas están pasando y la seguridad es fundamental para nuestros miembros y líderes, inclusive para mi persona, ¿no? En este momento de crisis, vaya, que estamos viviendo y que hemos estado viviendo a lo largo de los años por las narrativas, ¿no? Que como mi compañera A, que ya hablaba de la oposición, cómo ellos utilizando estas narrativas están utilizando inteligentemente el divide y vencerás, ¿verdad? Mantenernos divididos. Entonces, ¿y cómo esto nos afecta? ¿Y cómo nos encanta llevar a hacer sentido de los retos y desafíos que nosotros estamos viviendo? ¿Cómo educamos y entrenamos a la gente para que le encuentren sentido de que no es así como nos vamos a organizar, no es así como vamos a cambiar nuestras vidas? Entonces, ¿cómo creando ese sentido de unión y de solidaridad entre nosotros mismos? Y puedo dar muchos ejemplos. Uno de los ejemplos que yo hablaba ahorita de cómo la oposición, las corporaciones se están enriqueciendo, ¿no? ¿De dónde? De los mismos recursos que hay en nuestras comunidades, del dolor, del trabajo, el sudor de la gente, ¿no? Entonces, nos están robando en nuestras narices, básicamente, pero en esas cortinas de humo donde nos mantienen no podemos ver todo esto. Entonces, ¿cómo es que vamos a dejar de permitirles a ellos que tomen ventaja de nosotros? Es organizándonos. Por ejemplo, el año pasado ganamos la estabilización de renta en el estado de Washington. En inglés hay una frase que dice, the rent is damn high. La renta es demasiado alta, ¿no? Y muchas personas están quedando durmiendo en sus propios vehículos por este problema. Entonces, los impuestos a los ricos. Este año en el estado de Washington estamos esperando la firma del gobernador. Y cuando vemos a las personas con riquezas, pero que quieren tomar el empoderamiento de donar a organizaciones como Firelands y respaldar nuestro trabajo como nuestros aliados, no como nuestra posición, es un privilegio, ¿no? Que sus recursos sean destinados para crear un justo más mundo, un mundo más justo. Y una de ellas es nuestra donadora Becky, que es una persona que está educándose y educando a otros para que esto sea posible.
So one of the ways that we try to advocate across classes is by primarily what I mentioned of through those deed restrictions of advocating for different income brackets, I guess, and making sure that there's housing available to everyone within different wages. And then we also have a large Latina population, approximately 30% in our town. And so a few years ago, we created a Latinx committee, which is run by someone in the community who is Latina, and she has a great web of people that she's connected to and that trust her, and those meetings that she has regularly with them are just them. There's not outside community members that do not identify as Latina. It's a safe space. It's private. They're like actually not open to the public, just so they can have a private space and feel safe. And then we also, last year, we started doing a annual collaboration event with a couple other local organizations to just try to let our community here know all of the different housing resources that are available to them and how to kind of access different resources and loopholes if you are an undocumented community member, and different ways that you can go about accessing some of those things. And all of those things are fully in Spanish, and again, private, like invitation only, so that no one unwelcome will be attending. And then for any of the other separate public events that we have, we offer Spanish translation for them. And at all of the events, Latina and public, we have childcare services available as well. And in general, those are some of the things that we're doing, but I think we definitely could still continue doing a lot more. And I'm excited to hear, or I'm happy to have already heard what other orgs are doing. I think that's awesome. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Thanks all. Really appreciate your answers.
All right, so the next question is, sorry. In community organizing, distributing power is very essential to building strong, sustainable movements. In your organizations, how is power distributed in your organizational structures and why? What are the processes that your organizations use to be able to train leaders to then exercise their power? And again, please just go as you feel called.
Bueno, ahora empiezo yo. Uy, una metáfora que utilizamos mucho en Firelands que es el empoderamiento de nuestros líderes. Y hay una metáfora que dice, dale un pez a un hombre y comerá hoy, pero si le enseñas a pescar, comerá el resto de su vida, ¿no? Me encanta este proverbio chino porque es una manera de enseñar a cómo fomentar la educación, capacitación y la autosuficiencia. No queremos solamente ir y llevarles las cosas a nuestros líderes, pero cómo que ellos vengan en el proceso, ¿verdad? Entonces, puedo dar algunos ejemplos de ello y es la escalera de poder. La escalera de poder, cómo podemos identificar en lo que ellos quieren participar, qué es el rol que ellos quieren llevar, cómo van de pequeños pasos a llegar a una montaña muy alta, ¿no? Entonces, el desarrollo de su liderazgo, por supuesto, estoy hablando de eso en específico, y cómo Firelands trae diferentes programas para ellos, para que ellos puedan capacitarse, educarse y entonces hacer el trabajo por sí mismos. Yo soy organizadora ahora, pero yo no quiero ser organizadora toda la vida. Y no porque no me encante mi trabajo, es porque creo que hay muchos más otros líderes que también pueden organizar a otros. Ese es mi lema, ¿no? Que haya muchísimos más organizadores en el futuro. Entonces, la escuela de organizar fue el programa más reciente y muchos de nuestros líderes estuvieron aprendiendo a hablar con nuestros vecinos, tocando puertas, motivándolos a salir a votar para hacer la diferencia, porque solamente así. También tenemos algunos entrenamientos. Justo ahora estamos terminando la sesión legislativa, cómo ellos pueden aprender a ir y hacer una carta y estar presentes en una audiencia pública y levantar su voz y hacerse visibles, porque esto no se trata de un estatus legal, esto se trata de empoderamiento. Entonces, ¿cómo ellos pueden venir participando a la legislatura? Y hablaba del empoderamiento. Hay una voluntaria, mi compañera Fati, ella era tan tímida y empezó así, haciendo videos, tanto tímida, pero ahora es una líder, ahora va a hacer encuestas, ahora está participando en la mesa directiva, en un comité directivo y próximamente la veo haciendo estrategias de campaña para ir y pelear contra todos esos multimillonarios que deben de esconderse si son inteligentes, porque vamos por ellos.
I can hop in next. Wow, thank you for that, Patty. You sound amazing, and I hope to meet you one day. Um, I, for our organization, in terms of like power distribution within our own org, separate from our community work, we have a really small team of only 3 staff members, and only one of them is our full-time executive director. So our board is a full working board who is completely involved in like the operations and the planning and the management of everything. So things are pretty dispersed amongst like workload, I would say, is pretty dispersed amongst the team, which helps, I think, and hopefully makes it feel like not one person is doing too much. But within that, since we are working so closely, the staff members still all report to the executive director, but then they have access to, like, our grant writer has access to the development committee and the development chair. So there's all these other outlets for, like, say, for instance, although this isn't luckily the case, but like say if our grant writer were having an incident, he would have other safe spaces to go to, instead of only having this one director on top of him. That hopefully that helps like distribute out some of the I guess like oversight and trust, I would say. And then similarly to Patty, we also do host a lot of different trainings. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Welcoming Neighbor Network, but that's a big thing that we're a part of, and they offer different types of trainings. And we definitely utilize as many of those as we can, as well as encouraging the staff and board members to seek out as much like external training as they can. And we also, on some of the trainings that we do, we actually invite other organizations that aren't even housing related to just brush up on their grassroots organizing skills and build that power ladder that you were talking about, Patty, as well. And just so everyone can have the skills of whatever their mission is, whatever their organization is, they feel like they have the resources to build their movement.
So at CAT, our power is intentionally tenant centered and distributed. So campaign directions are shaped through tenant conversations and leadership groups, not necessarily top-down decisions. We have a hotline that we take calls from, and that has a large impact on kind of where we focus our energy or how we're strategizing based on what we're hearing from community members that they're experiencing. We don't just want to take in our own personal accounts as board members or employees or whatever the case. It plays a large role in kind of channeling our energy. So we strongly encourage tenants to take part in campaigns, to shape our priorities, and staff kind of play a facilitative role in that. But we do also employ and have board members that have experienced housing issues. And we really support people to move from like receiving services to participating in trainings and then eventually leading these tenant movements to organizing their own campaigns, participating in the policy advocacy. And we really encourage people, like, even if you don't have experience in like speaking to representatives, in submitting testimony, whether verbally or through writing, to just get in there if you feel comfortable and want to go after it, because the experience really comes from the repetitive doing. So our training structure kind of goes from, educating people on what their rights even are, because that's the baseline of what we do. And then from there, organizing skills, helping people get comfortable in that outreach and facilitation and strategizing. And then to the political education, we're understanding kind of how these systems work. My first session was a whirlwind and so many things to learn, and I don't think that learning will ever stop. So just really supporting people in choosing to go whichever route they'd like. And it matters because sustainable movements aren't built by experts, they're built by people who have directly been impacted, and who have the tools to lead. So our main focus is just figuring out what tools those are and handing them over.
Thank you so much, all three of you. It's really interesting to hear how you think about it, and also the clear overlaps between the ways that you train folks up and how you decide what to do next. Can you hit the next slide, Kathy? Okay, so right now in our Giving Project, our participants are in the process of having conversations with the people in their lives about tenant and housing justice and the importance of moving money to this work. So we'd love to get your advice on how to navigate some of the more challenging fundraising questions they may come across, and conversations they may come across. Kathy, will you click to the next slide, which has the actual question related to this context? So the question is, what's in it for someone who doesn't see themselves at the center of this work? How do you talk to folks who don't see themselves necessarily as part of the movement?
Sorry, did you want us to answer both of these in the same?
Yeah, the first slide was kind of just like context for the actual question. So yeah, so the question itself is what you can focus on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, and my cats decided to make an appearance. This is
Oh, it's
Charlie,
fine.
everybody.
It's fine. We love to see a cat. We love to see pets on screen. You've been seeing my corned beef on screen, so it's all good.
Um, so, I mean, what's in it for somebody who doesn't see themselves at the center? I I feel like even if somebody isn't currently facing housing instability, the work matters so much. Um, Housing stability really strengthens whole communities. So less displacement means stronger schools, stronger economies, stronger social networks, more accessibility. It's not necessarily just going to, by strengthening housing stability, it's not going to impact those who have experienced it only. It will impact the collective. Um, a lot of people I've found, regardless of their political leanings or whatever the case, really feel like the system should be fair. And so I really like to prioritize that in conversations, because tenant organizing is just that. It's pushing for fairer systems. And it kind of leads into the next point, that a lot of people who feel like they're really secure and stable in their housing tend to be, from my experience, a lot closer to instability than they may realize. Sometimes bringing that up is helpful, sometimes it's not. And that's kind of where you may have to gauge where to take the conversation. Because I have found, like, bringing up this could be you might be helpful for somebody who I feel like is I'm connecting with more emotionally, but for some, maybe somebody who might be a little bit more abrasive initially, can actually make them defensive, and kind of shut me out. So it's just something you take with a grain of salt. Um, I would also say when tenants win protections, it sets a precedent that benefits the broader community. So, again, speaking to that collective benefit. And it's an opportunity to align values with action. So, supporting housing justice is a tangible way to contribute to that fairness, to the equity in your community. Even if you don't see yourself at it, a lot of people do want to make their community better in whatever way they're capable of. So, you don't have to be at the center of the issue to benefit from a more just and stable housing system and to play a role in building that. Yeah.
Thank you, Adriana.
I can hop in. I definitely agree with everything that she just said. And then to add a little bit, I think for us to have some more conversations with people in the community that don't feel super represented, for on the one side, we have learned of different I guess like different classes and stuff of people that we have been excluding. For instance, retirees here, when we fight for deed restrictions on homes, it is primarily income based. And if you're a retiree, obviously your income is significantly different than a working class person. And so even if they have lived here their whole life and worked here, but they're not the millionaires and billionaires, they also really struggle to make it work. And so we've listened to them of them not feeling like we are representing them and adding that to our advocacy of like, okay, if certain people aren't feeling centered, one, can we add them? And then two, yeah, similar to what Adriana was saying, I feel like you have to just help show them how essential these people are in your community, whether it's hospital workers or firefighters or whatever. If they don't live locally, like especially emergency needs, but also not that those are the only people that bring value to a community, but sometimes are a good example to make them understand. But I feel like for us, one of our tactics is to kind of learn as much as we can about a person before we meet them for like a donor meeting or just even an introduction meeting, and seeing where we can find as much common ground with them before even meeting them, and trying to go into it with that of okay, we obviously are going to disagree on XYZ. So we are going to really drive home ABC so that they know that we are aligned on certain things and that we do have shared values and want the best for our community, and especially for so many of our extremely wealthy community members of those millionaires and billionaires, that are second or third or fifth homeowners that are barely here. You have to just play to that side of wanting to contribute to this community if you are going to claim this as one of your homes.
Uy, qué pregunta tan interesante. Yo quiero hablar de los unos a unos. Esas conversaciones profundas que tenemos con nuestros vecinos puerta a puerta. Y lo primero que nos encontramos es una persona que a veces por vergüenza no quieren aceptar los problemas que están enfrentando, ya sea de seguridad médica, ya sea de vivienda, ya sea de estatus migratorio. Y no es hasta que vamos ahí indagando y mostrándoles de que no debemos de sentir vergüenza de hablar de los problemas que estamos enfrentando. Y muchas veces encontramos personas que no es tanto vergüenza, pero dicen, a mí no me falta nada, yo estoy bien, ¿no? Porque tienen esa semilla de la narrativa de la oposición tan incrustada que les cuesta aceptar que tienen un problema. Y cuando empezamos a tener estas conversaciones con ellos y les empezamos a preguntar, ok, tú tienes aseguranza médica, tú tienes una casa, pero ¿conoces a alguien que no tiene un techo digno? Y cuando empezamos a hacer esas preguntas, dicen, ah, sí, mi vecino está enfrentando este tipo de problema. ¿Y cómo te hace sentir? Empezamos a agitar a la gente y ellos empiezan a abrirse. Yo digo que cuando tocamos puertas y empezamos a entrar en confianza con las personas, ellos van abriendo las puertas poco a poco, pero también están abriendo sus mentes con nosotros y se muestran tal cuales son. Y una vez que encontramos su interés personal, una vez que tocamos su corazón y empiezan a abrirse, les empezamos a mostrar las maneras en la que pueden usar su poder, ese poder personal, al poder colectivo. Tú no estás pasando este problema, pero alguien más lo está pasando. ¿Cómo pueden usar esa solidaridad, esa empatía, esa resiliencia, esa fe, esa semilla de amor, de unidad, para que alguien más que está siendo impactado por el sistema pueda tener una vida diferente? Entonces, David es una persona veterana de guerra, es nuestro primer voluntario y nuestro primer donador. El primer donador que tuvo Firelands donando $50. Él decía que él no necesitaba nada, que él estaba bien y no creía en los cambios. ¿Hasta cuándo? Hasta cuando llegamos a su casa, un equipo pequeño, a decir, no, David, no estás bien. Y tú mereces más que eso. Tú mereces también tener una vida digna. Y empezamos a organizarnos entre nosotros y empezamos a ver que realmente estaba siendo impactado por el sistema. Y empezamos a llevar cositas poco a poco a su casa y él dijo, tenía vergüenza de expresar lo que tenía. Y así como él cambió su mente, así estamos cambiando las mentes de otros.
Ooh, powerful. Thanks, you all.
Yeah, that was fire. Thank you, Patty. All right. Our last preset question is, what is one hope and or one curiosity that you all have for the tenant and housing justice movement in our lifetime?
I can start. I feel like I haven't began the questions. Or began the answers first. So, I have a few that I wrote down. One, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the real estate transfer tax, but that's like a big dream that we have here in Jackson, but obviously we're in Wyoming where they're very anti-tax everything. It's a very conservative state. It's really hard to get anyone to support any kind of taxes of any kind. But specifically for the real estate transfer tax, we were hoping that would go through, because the way it was written was homes that would sell for over $1 million would have a certain percentage of tax attached to them. And so the ones that are under that would hopefully still stay somewhat accessible to local workforce, which I know even saying $1 million for is accessible sounds probably crazy to all of you guys, but here in Jackson, that is very low. But if we were to be able to implement that, there's certain properties that are going for like $23 million. Like if they had just a small percentage of a tax on that, we would be able to bring so much more money into, well, it would first go through the state, but hopefully we could try to get our hands on it for other housing needs. And that would be huge, but again, has not ever passed because they're very anti-tax. I have also heard in other mountain towns similar to ours that have a lot of second homes and vacation homes and stuff, that they have started implementing what's called a vacancy tax. Again, the word tax is not going to ever fly with Wyoming legislation, but some kind of thing that would hold homeowners accountable for the amount of times that their mansions are sitting empty and not housing our local community that needs housing, and somehow being able to bring that money back into our community for ourselves, and for the needs of our community would be amazing. And then obviously Wyoming is like one of the worst in general for tenant restrictions and protections, I would say. So really any increase we could get on that at all would be a dream come true. The bar's pretty low, I'm not gonna lie. And then me personally, my full-time day job is working with people with disabilities. I would love for just my dream, which I know is never going to happen, but I can dream big if I'm just taking this question how I want to, which would be to make all housing just like so accessible, like as accessible as possible. Even if you don't have a disability now, that is the one marginalized identity that you can join at any time. And also, even if you don't become disabled, you are going to probably become old, and moving around on a bunch of stairs and things is not ever easy. So I am a big advocate for accessible housing.
Thank you.
I would definitely, oh, sorry, Emily. Okay. I would definitely agree with that. Yeah. That's kind of my hope as well. I don't know if anybody's heard of TOPA. It's the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. It's basically, it can also be known as the right of first refusal, I believe. But it is basically something that would allow tenants, if an apartment complex is going up for sale or a home is going up for sale, it would allow tenants the opportunity to purchase the home if they so choose, and or find an organization to purchase the home on their behalf, therefore allowing them more control over their ability to reside in the place they live. So my hope would be that tenant organizing grows from just protections into like collective and cooperative control of our neighborhoods. Right now, a lot of our work is about defending our right to stay, fighting evictions, pushing for protections, responding to harm. It's really about responding to the immediate need, and that work's critical. It's the longer vision, the longer term vision, I think that's bigger than that. You know, we want to get past just essentially putting a tourniquet on, and we really want to get toward healing. So it's, I think it's about tenants having a real say, not just in the individual housing, but in what happens to their buildings, to their communities, to their neighborhoods. And my dream would be that, you know, we start to see things like TOPA being passed nationwide, so that people could actually have the opportunity to gain control of their neighborhoods. Cooperative homeownership, long-term affordability, community stability, and again, that collective action. Instead of the displacement being the default, it creates a pathway for tenants to stay, organize, shape their own futures collectively. That's to me what housing justice could look like at its fullest. If we had the resources, not just access or protection, but ownership and agency and shared decision making, a true, what I feel is community. But getting there requires consistent long-term organizing where people stay involved, where we build those relationships and we grow into leadership over time. Yeah.
Gracias, Adriana. Y mi esperanza es que todos tengan una vivienda justa, por supuesto, saludable y económica. Yo no quiero que más personas pasen por lo que mi familia tuvo que pasar y por la que todavía algunos familiares están pasando hoy en día. Yo no quiero eso. En nuestro trabajo que he comentado ahora en el canvaseo tocando puertas, siempre que hacemos la pregunta de lo que más les está afectando en ese momento, la respuesta para la mayoría de las personas es la misma, que lo más importante para ellos es tener una vivienda saludable, ¿no? Tener un techo digno para sus familias. Y las historias que escuchamos en esas conversaciones son estremecedoras. Es imposible llegar a dormir y a comer con esas historias contigo. Hay que trabajar mucho la salud mental porque sabemos que las situaciones son muy precarias. A eso le podemos añadir que el estado de Washington es 70% lluvia, inundaciones, y eso es una de las cosas que acarrean muchos de estos problemas, ¿no? Escuchar que se les están viniendo los techos encima. Puedo hablar de María, de Juana, de Teresa, de José, y todas las historias son las mismas. ¿Cómo puedes mantener una casa móvil, un apartamento caliente cuando el sistema de insolación es muy malo? La crisis climática también que estamos viviendo actualmente, pues sabemos que nos están afectando a todos porque son extremadamente horribles. Y ni hablar de los incendios, ¿no? Que estamos enfrentando en los diferentes estados en los que vivimos todos nosotros. Firelands hizo una investigación junto con la Cámara del Comercio y hizo encuestas a 600 personas en diferentes áreas rurales alrededor del estado de Washington, donde estábamos escuchando estas conversaciones individuales y donde estábamos viendo otra vez el sufrimiento, ¿no? Por las condiciones de los hogares de todas estas personas. Y sí, encontramos un problema, pero también encontramos una solución. Soluciones que hablábamos con la Cámara del Comercio y que era un proyecto muy ambicioso, un programa muy grande de trabajos para nuestra gente, o sea, que la misma gente que tenía un problema en sus hogares tuviera la posibilidad de ser instruidos para arreglar sus propios hogares. Aquí habría una creación de empleos, ¿verdad? Y también las personas podrían arreglar sus propios hogares. Es un programa ambicioso, como lo dije, de climatización para proteger a nuestra gente y al mismo tiempo al medio ambiente. Pero sabemos ya que las investigaciones que hemos hecho es un proyecto muy grande que va a requerir billones, no millones, pero billones de dólares que pueden costear, por supuesto, esta posición las corporaciones y los multimillonarios. A nosotros nos llevaría 200 años solamente acondicionar las viviendas del área rural donde yo vivo, en Grace Harbor. Entonces, esto no puede ser. Sabemos que es así, pero no es imposible. Por eso seguimos luchando para encontrar estas inversiones de recursos públicos y, por supuesto, los cambios de los programas estatales para transformarlo. Esta es la visión que Firelands tiene.
Thank you so much, all of you. Um, Super interesting, so rich, and so much more to talk about. So what we'd like to do now actually is we think it's a good time to move to the Q&A. And in order to give people a little bit of time to process, you can go to that slide. Thank you, Kathy. In order to give people a little bit of time to process, we're going to put folks into breakout rooms. And we'll stop recording here. So Kathy, I'll give you a second to do that.